Hey there, it's Andre with the Impulsive Thinker podcast. This episode is brought to you by KADAK, the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada. Today, I've got Geeta Nadkarni from Impact with Influence. I enjoyed our conversation about vision so much, excuse me, that we had a conversation and I wanted to bring her back to talk about this topic, which I think is very, very important. It's the importance of getting an ADHD diagnosis. We were talking a while back. Oh, sorry. Welcome, Geeta. Good.
Hi. I'll just sit here and let you talk. It's fine.
We were talking about it that, it was asked to me, is it important to get an ADHD diagnosis? And I said, yes. And then I think we need to have this conversation because there's a lot of people out there today, especially with this COVID stuff. People are getting more. The ADHD is coming out with a lot of people because now it's become a disorder. Because we need to fit in a certain mold to survive the isolation and being away from work and structures. But at the same time, it's become a trendy term in the entrepreneurial world. Oh yeah, definitely. I got ADHD. A lot of people self-diagnosing and then promoting themselves as ADHD. And then I believe it was yourself saying, then what's the importance of getting a diagnosis? If it's all out there, you got a bunch of books, you can self-diagnose yourself. What can we do?
I'm so curious because it's funny because I had a different client who is ADHD and works with folks who have ADHD. And I think she had the sense that I was ADHD, or maybe not ADHD, but ADD at least.
Yeah. So just to be clear, listener, it doesn't matter if we use ADHD. The H is hyperactivity, impulsivity. So either way, we're talking about the same thing. Either it's hyperactive physically or not.
Yeah, exactly. So, and God knows, in my line of work, I work with entrepreneurs, coaches, and consultants primarily. And there is a huge number of them that do have ADHD for sure, most of whom are not diagnosed and are not in any way managing it other than, the usual guilt and shame and trying to make lists and failing miserably and then telling themselves that, they suck, which is so unproductive. So it's such a breath of fresh air to meet somebody who has it and then has owned it. And I think it's really, for me, it doesn't matter whether it's ADHD or it's depression or even if it's not mental health, it's something else, like you're transgender, you've got something that makes you different. You've got something that makes you not fit into the mainstream status quo. It's only a weakness if you don't own it. If you own it, then it becomes a strength. It becomes your selling point. It becomes this magical portal through which you're going to create abundance for yourself and for others. I truly believe this.
Well, so do I. That's like a lot. That's why Tactical Breakthroughs is built on this mantra of, unmanaged strengths become weaknesses. So if you just manage your ADHD symptoms, they become your strengths. So if like you said, a couple of things there, depression, anxiety. There's another thing too, is a lot of people are reading into these, symptoms of ADHD. But you also got to be aware is depression, anxiety, borderline personality, a bunch of other disorders. Once they're not managed, they do have similar symptoms.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the thing is, if you treat those other disorders, anxiety, depression, those symptoms disappear. Okay. Now with ADHD, it's chronic. Even though you manage it, the symptoms are still there. Even if you treat an anxiety, even if you treat the depression, the symptoms are still there. That's ADHD. It's chronic. And there's a big difference. So if you're overworked, overwhelmed, you're working 20, 30 hours a day, right? You're going to come into a depressive state, tired state, and you're going to have these moments of inattention, distraction, but these are all signs from your body. Mm-hmm. If you take care of that, get the rest and reduce your workload, they go away. It's not chronic. So that's a big deciding factor there.
And something that as you were talking, something occurred to me, Andre, which is, I think that if people are struggling with these symptoms, I think one of the possibly, and you'll tell me if I'm onto something here, one of the things that prevents folks from seeking a diagnosis is the weight of, I'll have something else I need to fix, and I feel like my life is already out of control or overwhelming. Whereas the way I think you and I both see it now is, there's actually relief to be had in having the correct diagnosis, because if you have one of the other conditions that is curable or treatable, and the symptoms go away, then that's great. Your problem is quote unquote fixed. With ADHD, because the symptoms don't go away, you can stop investing a huge amount of time, money, and energy in trying to fix yourself, and start instead from a place of deep self-acceptance, working with what is. And this is a huge principle that I work with, is if you can accept and work with what is, there's so much treasure to be uncovered.
Exactly. Like, and that's the key thing about getting the diagnosis is, what you're fighting. And it is a management thing. That's what I went through, is how do you fix it? How do you cure it? Well, you can't. All you can do is manage it. There's nothing wrong with it. Our brain's wired differently. Our brain is not wired to work in today's world. 9 to 5, certain things, certain structures, sit here, do this, do that. And that's the only difference, is that it's not wired for today's world. And there's a lot of more distractions available to pull us away. Now that I think, Geeta, there's a couple of things here why people are resisting diagnosis. There's a couple of things here, my observations. And just to note, everyone, Geeta's not a therapist. I'm not a therapist. We're not licensed for this. We're not here. This is not a diagnosing tool. This is just a discussion of our observations of the importance of getting diagnosed. And I'm talking from experience, because I got diagnosed. And to me, though, it was a game changer for me.
And I want to be clear, I don't have ADHD. So I'm actually here as somebody who works with a lot of people and loves people who have ADHD. And so I'm coming here to inform myself and understand better how I can support the people in my life whose brains are wired differently from me, and who aren't doing what they do to piss me off. Yes. It's just how they are. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So there's still a lot of negative stigmatism about ADHD out there. So it's easy to joke about having it versus actually finding out I have it. People are still afraid of having that label put on, because now it makes it real that there is something to work on and to do. I can't just take, even the medication, from observations of other people speaking about it in the books I've read, that medication doesn't cure or fix anything. It helps to manage. So there's a lot of people afraid of getting a diagnosis because they might get a label, or they might find out it's something different. And it's easy to joke about it and have a conversation versus saying, like me, I have it, I got diagnosed, and I know the shortcomings and I know its strengths now. And for me, I had the relief of the diagnosis, because now I understood, I just explained my whole 44 years up to that point.
Right.
Like Rick Green says, it was an invisible opponent you could not see, but now you see that opponent, you know who's sucker punching you and when and how, right? And that's the importance. Now, I think it's also extremely important if you think you're going for an ADHD diagnosis and it turns out to be depression or anxiety and it's not ADHD, now you know it's depression and anxiety. You can treat that mental health issue, because if you treat depression, you're not treating the ADHD. If you treat ADHD, you're not actually treating the depression. There's two different ways to work with that. And then the other thing too, the thing is, if you want to have a diagnosis, that means you're going to go get therapy, you're going to go on a medication journey, you're going to go through, you got to do some deep, serious work. And there's a lot of people who are afraid of that. So I think the more I'm rambling here, I think it's actually more of a fear of having to work on it and being real and honest with yourself. Like I remember this when I started my first engineering company in 2007. I left that company because a lot of my undiagnosed ADHD symptoms took over. So I was a lot of yelling, screaming, and just going, notice these behaviors I did not like about myself. So I looked myself in the mirror and I stared, I locked eyes. Try to do that to yourself. Look in the mirror and tell us something you don't like about yourself. Can you hold that eye gaze? Most people can't. So I did the mirror check. I stared, I said, I don't like this behavior. I don't like this. So I got a list of things I didn't like about myself. But then I looked at it, says, but how can I avoid it? Right. But that takes true deep work and truth, honesty. Like if you can't be honest with yourself, it's hard to be honest with others. So I think there's two sides to it. Knowing it's real or knowing it could be something else, and knowing that you have to do some deep work is difficult.
Yeah. And I think you might be internalizing, not you, Andre, but one might be internalizing the voices of judgment that you've had historically in your life, where you've been told you're a certain way, you've been told you're lazy, you've been told you're forgetful, you've been told you don't pay attention, blah blah blah, whatever it is. And a tool that I created that I often use with my coaching clients, not necessarily in the context of ADHD, but just to uncover hidden kind of your unconscious agenda, right? Like hidden blocks that you have to pursuing your goal, pursuing your dream, or having the success that you want in your life. Because if you have symptoms that are unmanaged at the moment and you're not wanting to look at them, if some part of you, let's be really clear about what's going on here, your conscious mind is all gung-ho to do this work, right? Obviously.
Yes. Yep.
It's a part of you and your unconscious self that's like, whoops, nope, this is unsafe. Bad things will happen to us. We don't want to, can't deal with this. You've got so much else going on, blah, 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 whatever the thing is. So it's unfortunate because your conscious self is about 2 or 3% tops of your capacity. Mm-hmm. Your unconscious self has basically high-speed dial-up to your subconscious, which creates your reality. So your conscious mind is working with dial-up, your unconscious wounded self has high speed, and your subconscious is creating your reality, and both of them are communicating. So what you have to do, a really great tool that you can use, it's called the Clarificator. I think if you go to impactwithinfluence.com/clarificator, you can get it for free. And it's CLARIF, F-I-C-A-T-O-R, Clarificator.
Yeah, we'll have that in the show notes too.
We'll have it in the show notes. Step 3 of the Clarificator is, and this is the step that you could use, so you could just write this down and use it right here, is if I were to, and then insert the success that you have, or in this case, insert getting an ADHD diagnosis, let's say. Or if you're actually worried about not getting an ADHD diagnosis, maybe you're hiding behind the symptoms of ADHD and you're terrified that it might be something else. If that's what your fear is, just own whatever it is. And in your sentence, you write, if I were to get X diagnosis, whichever one you fear most, I fear that. And then just write whatever comes. Do not censor, don't overthink it. It is super important that you either write, or if you really don't, like if you're dyslexic or something and writing is an issue for you, then speak it into a voice recorder. It's super important that you say it out loud or you write it down, because more will reveal itself. There's a momentum from speaking or writing that you will not have if you're just thinking. Mm-hmm. When you're thinking, your ego can eat the same unconscious wounded self is going to hijack your thoughts and take you sideways and get you distracted in no time flat. But if you're writing, it's almost like your internal critic, your censor is bypassed. And so this is a really powerful tool. We have had hundreds and hundreds of clients have massive breakthroughs before they start coaching with us, simply by using this tool, because it shows you what your internal motivation is and what the problem really is. Because now if you're familiar with design thinking, step 2 of design thinking is identify the correct problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And that's all I'm about. Because band-aiding symptoms doesn't fix the problem. You're just creating another symptom. And I'll tell you one thing, the clarificator does work. I've experienced it twice. I doubted them both times, and they work very well. But that's
Andre is a true skeptic. So if he's saying it works, you know it's true. Because man, this guy will not do anything that he's just like, I love that you were coachable and you were willing to try it, but I could see you leaning back. Like I said, I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who've used it, most of whom probably didn't believe that it would work for them. And I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of testimonials of people being like, holy shit. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
Welcome to yourself. This is your true motivation.
Well, an early mantra I took on when I got into the bit like working full time is I'm going to try it once so I can say it doesn't work, then I'm not a hypocrite. But like, like Dan Sullivan's positive focus, I thought that was the biggest load of crap. But then I said, I'll try it to say it doesn't work, and I've never looked back. So, but yeah, the clarificator is definitely good. Like the other thing too, basically you were saying that getting a diagnosis means you own it. That means you can take responsibility for it. If you want to joke around and say, I have it, you're actually hiding behind that self-diagnosis as an excuse mindset, right? If you're going to use ADHD as an excuse and not as an explanation, then you're not in the right mindset and you're just using it as an excuse not to do certain things. But if you own it and it's an explanation, then you know what to do to make it actionable and to manage it to make everyone successful around you. And that's another point that's very important with the diagnosis. Now, the other thing too, I want to explain to a lot of people, hopefully this episode gets around that people were thinking they are and are not, is ADHD is on a spectrum. Okay. You can go from very, very mild to severe. And I am severe ADHD, which means mild is you might have it, you have it. So you have the odd interference. It doesn't affect you day to day a lot, but there's some subtlety there. On the severe side, it's a daily challenge and it affects me every day. So there's a range there. So either just want people to realize it's not one of those things. It's all in, all out. Either you have it all the way or you have none. It's on a spectrum and it affects people differently. The guy actually introduced me to Dr. Hollowell's book, Driven to Distraction. He was on the mild side, and he takes, in certain situations, he can't maintain his attention and focus. So he takes medication for those types. Other than that, nothing else interferes with them. And then me on the other end, it's like, it's a constant management every day so I can stay on track. And I created management systems and habits to get around that. So
and now a community, which is so exciting. And I want to say, as someone like me, where I will probably dip my toe into what it must feel like to be ADHD occasionally. So I find that when I'm dysregulated, if I have not been sleeping enough, if I'm really overwhelmed with work, if I fall into bad habits and allow myself to get overstimulated, so that will happen sometimes once in a while when I'm very tired and I'm pushing myself to continue and not take the kind of breaks that I need to take because I don't know, I've overcrowded my schedule or bullshit like that. Right. I'll notice that just to keep my energy up, I will fall down social media. I will kind of pile on the stimulation, especially electronic stimulation, which I don't normally do. And then that dysregulates me, which leads me to need more stimulation. And that creates kind of a bit of a cycle.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So know that might be your reality. And if that's what's happening to you, chances are you don't have a condition necessarily. You just need to manage your workload a little bit better. Because I find that when I have open space on my calendar, I don't have these problems.
Right.
When I have too much going on,
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. ADHD is still there if you're on vacation. If you're taking a break, you're having and whatnot. And I think you were saying something that got me to thinking is if you're listening to this podcast or any of my episodes, or you're reading other books, listen to other podcasts, if you say it's maybe that's me sometimes. Again, I'm not a therapist, just as observations in my research. And maybe you're not ADHD, or maybe you're on the mild side. But if you all of a sudden hear the stuff and you go, holy crap, that's me, over and over, and you feel it inside, like, you're speaking my jam, then I think you're probably leaning towards an ADHD diagnosis, because that's the thing. Like you alluded to, either you can't understand what our brain goes through our understanding. And I remember talking to my oldest, she couldn't explain her impulsivity to anyone, to the teachers or to her friends. But when I sat down with her and said, hey, I have a feeling, just see if, it'd be funny, put a finger up that person's nose, right? Yeah, ha, ha, ha. The next, the nose, your fingers in the nose. And then she goes, exactly. I don't even think about it and I can't explain it. So, but we understand exactly without having to explain it. That's another sign of you might have the ADHD. I know I hate trends. I hate fads. I've had that my whole life. I think that has been my Asperger's size, but ADHD has become trendy. Entrepreneurialism has become trendy, right?
Mhm.
And not everyone's an entrepreneur. Everyone wants that vision, the belief of freedoms that they have, and it comes easy, but it's all trendy. And just because you're an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have ADHD. Just because you're an ADHD doesn't mean you're a good entrepreneur. So we just got to be careful. All these trends are out there. I know there's a lot of people saying, oh, all these big popular people have ADHD, but they had a long track. They had their challenges, but just make sure that it's for you and not to fit into a crowd, to be part of a
Yes.
crowd. Because
Yes.
even you can have entrepreneurs like Gita, you're a quick start, you're full of ideas, you're extrovert, you got full of energy. Everyone
Yep.
thinks that's the entrepreneur. But see,
Yep.
I'm the engineering side. I know a lot of successful multimillionaires who run engineering firms, but they're quiet, reserved, and fact finds. They just like to be crunching numbers. But those are entrepreneurs too. So we got to be careful of what's trending on Facebook and all this stuff and what's in the news. So
yeah. And if you haven't already listened to the other episode that Andre and I recorded, because we talk a lot and in detail with specific steps you can take about how to check your vision and your understanding of who you are and what you're going for, to make sure that you're not doing it from a place of compensation or trying to fit in or correct for something that you believe is unconsciously, again, believe is broken about you. Because that just, it's going to create so much suffering, because even if you get there, this is the worst part, even if you get to your goal, it's going to feel empty. It's going to feel inauthentic. And you'll never fit in if the hope, that's Brene Brown talks about this, where she's just like, the only way to truly fit in is to be willing to stand alone.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's such a paradox, but there it is. Like when you're true to yourself, then you truly belong everywhere you go. And when you betray yourself, you don't belong anywhere you go, even if it looks like you do from the outside. You'll never feel it. So.
Well, right from high school, even as a kid, every time I was not me, that's when I got into trouble. Every time I tried to follow the norm, people told me this is how you should do your business, blah, blah, blah. That's when I got into trouble. When I said, that's enough. I'll do it my way. That feels comfortable for me. I've succeeded every time, and I've moved
But this
forward.
is it. If you're a fish trying to ride a bicycle, you're always going to feel broken.
Yeah.
But if you're a fish, find a pool.
Yeah. Or let's help the fish find a pool, not just
exactly.
the fish, right?
Exactly. And when you meet your other fish, then you'll
I
finally
think
belong.
that's a good segue into what I'm saying. Like, that's why it's important to get the diagnosis, because then you can find the right pool to swim in. Either it's depression, either it's anxiety. Like, anxiety is high in entrepreneurs, period. ADHD, you have more moods swings, more depressive, you're in and out of depressions also. But if you don't treat the ADHD, you'll be fully depressed. So we got to keep that in mind. We get the right diagnosis, because then you're going to be guided by professionals on how to work through it and to teach you the tools. Reading it, taking courses, even listen to my podcast. All I can give you are tidbits that works for me. But if you work with a professional that understands because the psychology is tremendous, like what the brain is. I think you mentioned it too earlier, the subconscious, unconscious agenda. That's what sucker punches you all the time. You don't even know. You don't even know it.
This is true whether you have ADHD or any kind of, neuroatypicality or not. Like I would think I'm fairly neurotypical, and oh my God, my subconscious agenda constantly pulls the rug out from under my feet just when I'm getting to cruise speed. It's so frustrating.
So your subconscious habits are there and you don't even know it. Like for me, the one big thing I learned from your program was the money mindset I had from a child was holding me back for succeeding more financially. Because I'm supposed to earn X amount of dollars per every hour I put in. That was my upbringing. I didn't realize I had that mindset that always made me have to physically do work and clock in. But now it's after I realized that, oh crap, no, my value is different. I bring in work. I'm good at dealing with people and going after ridiculous concepts to prove to other people that it can't work or it can work. So the subconscious deal, and that's what the diagnosis and working with professionals is, to work with your subconscious, unconscious, and like, to me, either it's an excuse to not do things and you want to joke about it, or you want to take ownership to have the explanation so you can move forward and be productive. And
Yeah.
honestly, it's a better life.
And you know what? ADHD can be a huge boon. I mean, sometimes when I listen to the way that the folks who have taken ownership of it are able to function, the way that they're able to, utilize hyperfocus, the way that they're able to work with their brain instead of against their brain. I mean, I don't blame people for wanting to have ADHD because it looks damn sexy, I have to say. Like, when it's managed, it's a superpower.
Right.
It
Yeah.
really can be. And so if you're sitting there, like Andre said, if you're listening to this, I think, and you're thinking, oh, maybe I should pursue or explore a diagnosis. If you're one of those people that has some energy around, yeah, but I'm scared of the medical industrial complex and that sort of thing, maybe Andre can list some of the folks that he's worked with that are professionals. That would be a good starting place for you to get, even if you're not in the same state or city or country or whatever. If you can get in touch with or get a sense of the types of therapies that they use or the energy that they bring to their game, then you also have permission to find a caregiver that resonates with you. You don't have to work with the first person you Google.
Oh, that's important.
Right? It's so important. And I think that's also an unconscious fear that prevents people from getting help.
Oh, and then the other thing too that can be challenging is the medical field only spent 15 minutes in their 7 years of residency learning about ADHD, even psychiatrists. There's still a belief out there that if you're successful, well, first of all, ADHD is a kid thing. You grow out of it. Well, that's not true. It's gaining popularity and a lot more research. So there's a lot of doctors that say, no, you're an adult, you don't have it. And with mine, like my GP still tells me, I still don't believe you have it, but I respect the psychiatrist who diagnosed you. He goes, but you're successful. You done well at school. You don't have problems. Right. But those are how we measure it for kids. So it's going to be difficult to find a practitioner who's experienced with adult ADHD and is actually open to it. But like Geeta said, keep searching, do a lot of research on it, read up on it, so that when you do go get help, like for me, I had to talk to my general practitioner and I had to, in a way, convince him that I'm on the right path. Like, I read all this stuff, I got all this stuff on knowledge, and this is where I'm seeing it. I can, I wasn't just saying, I just want to get a diagnosis, right? Get educated, learn behind it. But it could be a little rocky road, but if you want that diagnosis, you're going to get it and you can find it. There's a lot of places online, like the Center of ADHD Awareness Canada, CADDAC, CADDAC.ca has a list of practitioners in Canada. CHAD, the center, that's the ADHD version. Man, I apologize, Chad. But that's the American version of CADDAC. I'll put all this information in the show notes. They have a list of American practitioners, and I'll try to find some from across the world, because every country or every area has its own center of ADHD group that has this type of information. And right now, one thing I learned is if I want to make sure I hit key points, I write them down. And I'm just going to do this last little check here. I think we've hit everything on here. Yeah. Did you anything else you want to add before we take off here?
No, I think it's, whether you have ADHD, whether you don't, whether you love somebody who does, whether you have some other kind of neuroatypicality, I just hope that you can give yourself permission to accept fully, embrace, not just accept, but embrace who you are. And the more you're willing to come to yourself from that place of love and celebration. So again, acceptance kind of feels almost neutral, like you're bringing yourself back to zero. And that may really be where you need to start. If you've internalized a lot of the negative messages you've received as a child, you may have internalized those, taken those stories on and made them yours and made them part of your identity. Yeah. So, acceptance will be that first step, but hopefully you will get to a place of celebration. And that just makes me really excited for the rest of us, because if you ADHD folks can own your gift, it is such a gift. And it's going to change the world for all of us. And I look forward to that. So don't hide from it. Don't deny it. And don't let anybody else's negative opinion slow you down.
Right. Yeah. And I've gotten that. It's not really, I'm using an excuse. You know, I don't talk to those people anymore because they don't want to understand or learn.
Exactly.
Right. So well done. Well, I think that was a great closer, Gita. You have a book called The Visions, How to Manifest It in 15
How to live your
minutes.
vision.
How
Yeah.
to live your vision.
How to live your
See, I
vision.
didn't have that in front of me. You can find out on Amazon, which we also have in the show notes. And you've got your Impact with Clarity program. I think you're offering a special pricing right now at the time
Yes.
of the recording.
So for your listeners, you can get 70% off. It's usually $597, so you can get it for $197. And these are all of the deeper tools that, you know, Andre's experienced because he's taken my main program, Impact with Influence. But these are all of the deeper mindset tools. So I don't do mindset the way most people do it. Most people are like, it's all about like positive thinking and pushing yourself and driving and productivity and all this stuff. Nothing wrong with that. Again, not dissing anybody here, but what I'm really interested in is how much of myself can I discover? How much of myself can I accept? And how much of myself can I celebrate? So I can take the things that I perhaps once upon a time thought were failings and turn those into strengths and turn those into superpowers. Like that's the alchemy that I'm obsessed with. And my favorite, like the most productive, reliable, most used and loved tools from our main program, we've distilled them and put them into Impact with Clarity so that anybody can use it as a tool of self-discovery and recognition.
And for that, for the listener, is a very key part of the diagnosis and the journey to owning and managing your mental health condition is it's an internal process and internal discoveries for clarity. And I think that'd be a great tool for everyone. Gita, thank you very much. I think it's a very powerful conversation for the listeners. And, you know, to whoever's listening to this, if you yourself are wondering if you have ADHD, please start the process. If you know someone who thinks that might have and question it, please share this episode. And if you got any questions more about this, let me know at questions@theimpulsivethinker.com. I'd love to hear from you and what you thought about this. Please share this. This is important information for everyone to know and understand. Thank you, Gita, for your time again.
Thank you so much.
And we'll talk to you guys later. Take care.